Today we'll be making spring pea soup. Now we'll start off by chopping up a few things, but then we'll put everything on for a simmer, and at the end, before our peas get very dark, we're going to put it in a blender and puree it. So this is a creamy soup, almost like a bisque, but we have to start off sauteing a few things first. So today we have a couple of from our allium family. We have a white onion and we have some leeks. We've got a little bit of homemade chicken stock right here, and we just make that with some veggies and some chicken bones, but you can certainly purchase your chicken stock as well. And I've got some frozen peas here. Have a little bit of cream, about a cup of cream, a little bit of butter for sauteing, and then for garnish I have some chives. We're gonna make some chive sticks. And I've got a little yogurt here. You could also use some sour cream, or even if you have cream left over, if you have more than a cup, then you could take a little bit of that and reduce it in a pan, and it gets really thick. But you want something that's gonna float on top of your soup. First of all, we're gonna start off with the onion. This one's already been cut in half, and the stem and the root cut off of it, so this will be simple. We're gonna take off the skin, and for this, I don't have to have neat little dice or anything like that. So I'm just gonna start cutting and chopping and slicing up this onion. If you get half moons, that's fine. I so rarely ever cut half moons, so this is kind of like a treat. And we'll put all that into a small bowl or some kind of container to get it off of our cutting board. Now I've got a couple of leeks here. I absolutely love leeks. They're one of my favorite vegetables of all time because they're so buttery and rich when you saute them down. Now if you're not familiar with leeks, they come with a big green part on them. All you have to do is cut that green part off and then soak these in a lot of cold water. When they grow up like this, and those big green leaves are up, and every time it rains, dirt goes down in those leaves. So you want to soak these really well, and you even want to check under the first layer and make sure there's no grit or dirt in there. We're gonna mostly use the white to light green parts of these. You wanna cut off the root end, give it a little haircut, toss those away into your discard bowl. It's easiest, and again, we don't have to worry about our shapes on this, so we're gonna slice this in half to make it nice and stable and a manageable size. And you just slice across like you did with your onion. And you can get into the pretty dark green part. So we're cutting down all these white parts and up into the light green. You don't want to get into the too dark green. That's where the leek gets kind of tough. And that won't cook down and melt away like the white. Okay, so we've got our onion cut, we've got our leek cut, and the only other cuts we need to make are for our chive sticks. We're going to make sure they're all together, and I'm going to trim up these ends so everything is even. And then I'm going to cut about 1 inch. And that gives you chive sticks. So that's our garnish. And we'll move on over and we'll start the soup making process. When you start your soup, we need to saute all of the onion and leek first. So I'm going to turn it up about medium-high. It should be about a 6.5, 7 if your stove is numbered. And I'm going to take the 2 tablespoons of butter and just go ahead and drop that in the pan and melt that up. Now with a lot of my recipes, I use a lot of garlic and onion together. For this one, I didn't want to add fresh garlic. I wanted something much more subtle for that. So I took an entire half head of garlic and threw it in some foil, drizzled a little oil and salt on it, and then I roasted it. And you can either roast it low and slow for about 20-25 minutes at 325, or you can pop it in a hot oven if you can keep an eye on it for just about 10 or 12 minutes. So we're just gonna squeeze all of these roasted cloves of garlic into our soup once we get it going. Now my butter is certainly melting. You hear that bubble and sizzle. I'm gonna throw the onions and the leeks in now. Get close to the surface of your pan when you have hot fat in the bottom, because you don't want hot fat splattering on you. Adding salt will help these vegetables to give off their water. That way we won't be getting any browning on here. We don't want really that caramelized flavor. We want light and sweet flavors. It's okay to move these around. Again, you don't want them to take on colors, so you want to keep them moving, especially at a medium-high temperature. If you find your pan getting dry, you may want to add just a little bit more butter close to the side so it has time to melt. If you should find a little bit of browning going on in the pan, you want to turn your heat down a bit. But don't worry if a little bit has already occurred, because when we add the stock, we'll be able to scrape that up off the side. Okay, once your onions get translucent and your leeks are starting to get really soft, that's a good time to add all your other ingredients. We're gonna add them in a particular order, though. We're gonna add the stock first because this will take our temperature down, and we don't want the peas sitting in there while we're trying to come back up to temp. So we'll add our stock now. Very carefully. This is a quart or 4 cups of stock. And then we'll add the peas. Now you can turn your heat up to high because you want to actually bring your soup up to a boil. You can add a next round of seasoning because my stock doesn't have any sodium in it, so I'm going to add a little bit of seasoning there. And I can go ahead and add the roasted garlic to this stock and the soup mixture. You just squeeze and push the softened cloves out. They will break down more as the soup cooks. Once you get a full rolling boil on your soup, and we're getting close to that now, you want to turn it down to low and let it simmer for about 15 minutes. So once you have simmered your soup, you want to take it off the heat, and we're going to blend it. Now you want to be very careful with blending. I have this Vitamix here in this professional kitchen. If you just have a blender that has a lid on it like this, you're going to want to get a dry tea towel or dish towel to hold the lid on. Secondly, for safety, you're not going to put much into your blender at one time. So what you're going to need to do is have a secondary container to put your soup in till you can put it back into your pot and add the cream to it. So what you do is you remove your lid and you're going to ladle this in. I'm going to be careful about how much of this stock I ladle in at one time because as I said, this should be kind of a thick, biscuity sort of consistency. So I'm going to be pretty veggie heavy in the beginning. And I'm going to fill this about 1/3 of the way. And that way when the steam gets pushed up against the lid, it's not going to pop open. Conversely, if this is a little too intimidating for you to do, you're worried about safety, you could just wait until the soup cools and then puree it and reheat it after that. I'm going to put the lid on securely as I can. And as I said, if you're just going on to a regular blender base, hold it down before you hit puree with a cloth that will protect you from any hot soup escaping here or steam. So you puree in small batches. Until there isn't any big piece of your vegetables left. Till you get a smooth, steamy, bright green consistency. Now I'm gonna pour that into my secondary pan and start that process again. And now that consistency is a little bit thick, so I'm gonna add a little bit more stock this time as I add the veggies. You could do this also with a stick blender right in the pan if you wanted to. It doesn't get your soup quite as smooth and velvety as a blender does, but it will work in a pinch, and it will save you from having to do it in batches. You could do it all at once. Again, we're gonna fill to about 1/3 of the capacity. Put our lid on tight. And puree again. So you can play around with the consistency of this soup. These two together should be just about perfect. And you would continue that with your whole pot until you get the right consistency. You might even want to keep a little bit of extra stock or some water around to add to your soup. I've got a nice hot soup still, so I'm going to add this cream. If you are chilling your soup, you want to warm it before you add the cream. And we're going to, since we've added that, we're going to re-season. If you don't want to add black pepper to this, you can certainly use the white pepper. That way it won't show, but do be careful because white pepper is a little more astringent flavor, and a little bit of pepper. Now we're going to taste this and make sure we've got enough salt for all of those sweet peas and the sweet cooked onion. Oh, it's got a wonderful fresh pea flavor, but super sweet, so we're gonna add another, probably half a teaspoon of salt. Let's stir that in. Now to serve this out and garnish it, I have a little soup bowl here, and I'll take my ladle and we'll ladle some of this in. It's a beautiful spring color as well if you're doing some kind of luncheon. And then we'll take a clean spoon and get a little dollop of the yogurt or the sour cream, what have you. And I like to make a little football shape in the spoon and gently drop it in so it floats on top. And we'll grab our chive sticks. And you could do just a little crisscross pattern and make it very fancy for your spring brunch or luncheon. And there you go, fresh spring pea soup.